I will not be your bride.
The Dishonored Woman whispered to the Alpha King at the mating ceremony, an original story by Maggie Reed. Prologue. There are decisions that define an entire lifetime. Alara had always known she would be sold. Omegas from lesser packs didn't have the luxury of dreaming about love. They had only duty, obedience, and the suffocating weight of white dresses that felt like shrouds. That morning, standing before the cold stone altar, surrounded by 200 wolves watching her like a fascinating experiment, she felt the wedding dress scrape her skin like broken glass. And before her, smiling with cruelty, she knew intimately, stood Alpha Victor, the man who had killed Michael, the only one who had loved her as a person, not as property. 3 moons had passed since Michael's blood stained the execution arena. 3 moons since she had sworn, holding his cold hand for the last time, that Victor would never possess her completely. But there she was, trapped, without choices. Or so everyone thought. Because Alara carried a secret she didn't even understand. Dreams that weren't hers. Visions of a man with silver eyes calling to her through mist and distance. Dreams where she shed tears of blood, and ancient magic awakened in response. When the elder asked if she accepted Victor as her mate, Alara looked at the monster who had stolen everything from her, and something inside her chest, wild, fierce, refusing to break, roared. Then she spoke the words that would change everything. I will not be your bride. The silence that fell was absolute, deadly, and then the hall doors exploded open. Because Alara didn't know that her tears had invoked a forgotten law, that her spilled blood, emotional but no less real, had called across lands and distances. That destiny was already on its way, dressed in black and power, with eyes that shone liquid silver. She would soon discover that refusing an alpha was only the beginning. That being claimed by a king was an entirely different fate. And that sometimes the strongest bonds are not those forced by tradition, but those chosen consciously, courageously, irrevocably by hearts that refuse to bow. Chapter 1. The wedding dress weighed like chains. Alara stood before the stone altar in the center of the great hall of the Red Shadow Pack, surrounded by 200 wolves watching her with hungry eyes. The white fabric, symbol of purity she no longer deserved according to whispers, scratched her skin like broken glass. And before her, smiling with teeth that looked like blades, stood Alpha Victor, the man who had killed Michael, the man who had forced her to this altar, the man who, in minutes, would claim her as property. Omega Alara, Elder Gregory's voice echoed through the heavy silence. Do you accept Alpha Victor as your mate? To honor, obey and serve until death parts you? The words were ancient formula, binding. Once spoken, there would be no going back. Alara looked at Victor, dirty blonde hair pulled back, scar cutting across his face from forehead to chin, gray eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. He had waited for this for months, since discovering that she and Michael, a low-ranking beta, had fallen in love secretly. Michael had been executed 3 moons ago. Accused of stealing the Omega, Victor already considered his. And Alara had been spared from death only because Victor decided humiliation would be better punishment, forcing her to marry him, to carry his children, to live every day knowing the man she loved had died for daring to dream of freedom. Answer, Omega, Victor growled, impatient. His hand, enormous, covered in scars, wrapped around her wrist with inescapable firmness. Everyone is waiting for your submission. Submission. The word spun in her mind like a blade. Alara had been raised for this, trained since childhood to bow, obey, disappear into shadows while alphas decided her fate. Her mother had died that way, broken, silent, erased. Her older sister lived that way, empty eyes, soul dead years before her body. And Alara had sworn she would be different, had sworn while holding Michael's cold hand for the last time, as he fell in the arena before silent witnesses, that she wouldn't let Victor win completely. But here she was. White dress? Altar? No way out. Or was there? Through the fog of fear and pain, Alara remembered something. An ancient law her grandmother had mentioned once, laughing bitterly as if it were a cruel joke. The law of sacred repudiation. If an Omega publicly refused an Alpha during a mating ceremony, before witnesses, on sacred ground, she could invoke the right to choose a new destiny. But the risk was absolute. The rejected Alpha could challenge her to combat to the death, or any other Alpha present could claim her immediately, and she would have no power to refuse. It was gambling with her own life. But looking into Victor's eyes, seeing the cruelty that awaited her for decades if she said yes, Alara realized something terrifying. She would rather die trying to be free than live as his property. So, with a voice that trembled only at the beginning, but gained strength with each word, Alara said, "I will not be your bride." Absolute silence fell like a stone. Victor froze, his hand still on her wrist, now gripping with force that made bones creak. "What did you say?" he asked quietly, dangerously. Alara raised her chin, forced herself to look him directly in the eyes, an act of defiance that Omegas were forbidden to do. "I said," and her voice echoed clearly through the hall, "that I will not be your bride. I will not be your mate. I will not carry your children. I invoke the law of sacred repudiation. I reject you, Alpha Victor, before all." Chaos exploded. Screams, roars of shock, murmurs running through the crowd like wildfire. And Victor released her as if burned, stepped back, face twisting in fury that made his wolf shine in his eyes. "You dare," he roared, and the power in his voice made the ground shake. "Reject me? After everything I did? After I spared your pathetic life?" "You killed the man I loved," Alara said, and tears finally burned her eyes. "You forced me to this altar. Would you call that sparing?" "You were mine," Victor snarled. He was approaching now, partial transformation happening, claws extending, fangs lengthening. "Your family promised you to me years ago. Your mark was mine by right. Omegas are not property," Alara said, even knowing these were empty words in a pack like this. "And I invoked the law. You cannot force me now." "I cannot force," Victor agreed, and there was something terrible in his smile. "But I can challenge. And when you fail, and you will fail, little weak Omega, I will ensure you regret this choice forever." He turned to Elder Gregory, who was pale and clearly shocked. "The Omega invoked ancient law. I demand my right as rejected Alpha. I challenge her to... I claim her." The voice cut through the chaos like a blade, deep, authoritative, loaded with power that made every wolf in the hall freeze instantly. And everyone turned. The hall doors had opened. When? No one had noticed. And there, framed by the setting sun's light, stood a man. No, not just a man. An Alpha. No, more than that. The Alpha King. Alara wasn't breathing. Because she knew him. Everyone knew him. Alexander, the Steel Wolf. King of the frozen northern lands. The most powerful Alpha within 1,000 miles. Legendary warrior. Relentless conqueror. And he was looking directly at her. Tall, absurdly tall, making even Victor seem small. Broad shoulders under a black coat that seemed made of shadows. Dark hair falling to his shoulders, partially tied. Face all hard angles and strong jaw. And those eyes. Silver. Not gray, but pure silver. Shining like liquid metal. Absolute predator. He walked down the center aisle, and the crowd parted like the sea. No one dared stand in his way. He stopped before the altar. Before Victor, who was pale but trying to maintain posture. "King Alexander," Victor said, bowing minimally. "This is a private ceremony. You are not invited. And yet I am here." Alexander didn't look away from Alara. "I heard an Omega invoke the law of repudiation. And by law, any Alpha can claim her if he does so before the challenge is accepted. Correct, Elder Gregory?" The elder swallowed hard. "See, correct, Your Majesty." If an alpha of higher rank claims before combat begins, then I claim her, Alexander repeated. Finally looked at Victor. Unless you want to challenge me as well? Deadly silence. Because everyone knew. Challenging Alexander was suicide. Victor was strong, cruel, dangerous. But Alexander was legend. She belonged to me, Victor managed to say, but there was defeat in his voice. Belonged. Past tense. Alexander extended his hand, not to Victor, but to Alara. Now she belongs to me. If she accepts. The silver eyes held hers, and there was something in them. Promise? Warning? Alara couldn't decipher, but she knew one thing. Victor would kill her slowly if she stayed, and this king, at least he was unknown. Perhaps as dangerous, perhaps worse, but also perhaps, just perhaps, different. So Alara, with hands that trembled but will that didn't waver, placed her hand in his. And when Alexander's fingers closed around hers, firm, warm, surprisingly gentle, something ran through her body. Shock. Heat. Recognition that made no sense. His eyes widened slightly, as if he had felt it too, but all he said was, "Come, my bride. We have much to discuss." And Alara, still wearing white that now seemed something completely different, left the hall, leaving Victor roaring fury behind, leaving her old life in ashes, walking toward an unknown destiny with the king who had claimed her, and ignoring the fact that, the moment their hands touched, something ancient and powerful awakened, something that would change everything. Chapter 2. The royal carriage was waiting outside the hall. Alara entered on shaky legs, still processing what had just happened, still feeling Victor's furious gaze burning on her back, still trying to understand why the most powerful king on the continent had appeared at her wedding ceremony and claimed her. Alexander entered behind her, filling the space with his presence. The door closed, and the carriage began moving immediately, quickly, as if fleeing. Perhaps they were. Heavy silence fell between them. Alara pressed herself against the opposite corner, sudden awareness of the situation hitting her. She was alone, with an alpha she didn't know. Who had claimed her as property before hundreds? Who could do anything now? "You're afraid," Alexander said. It wasn't a question. Alara forced herself to look at him. He was sitting relaxed, or at least seemed relaxed, but there was tension in his shoulders, something watchful in how he observed her every move. "I wouldn't be stupid if I wasn't," she responded, voice coming out firmer than expected. Something seemed to gleam in his eyes. Amusement? Approval? True. But you can relax a little. I'm not going to attack you. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. You have questions. I can see it in your face. So ask. Alara had 1,000 questions. She chose the most important. Why? Why did you claim me? Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you know the prophecy of ashes and blood? No. It's ancient, almost forgotten. It says that when an omega sheds blood, literal or through deep pain, in the presence of her true destined alpha, a bond will be forged, a bond that connects souls through dreams, memories, emotions. He touched his own chest over his heart. A bond impossible to break until both accept or reject completely. Alara blinked. And what does that have to do with me? 3 nights ago, I had a dream, but it wasn't mine. His eyes held hers. It was of an omega crying over a dead man's body, a beta named Michael. She was swearing vengeance, swearing she wouldn't bow to the alpha who had killed him. And when I woke, he touched his temple. I felt as if I knew that pain intimately. Terror froze Alara's veins. You dreamed about Michael? And you, every night since then, your fears, your memories, your determination to refuse Victor even if it cost your life. Alexander leaned closer. So I investigated, discovered today's ceremony, and I knew if the prophecy was correct that I needed to be there. Because somehow, you and I are connected. This is madness, Alara whispered. It is, but it's true, and I suspect, he tilted his head, studying her, that you also had dreams, with me, didn't you? She wanted to deny. But yes, in the last 3 nights, she'd had vivid dreams. Battles she hadn't witnessed. Dark stone castle. Man with silver eyes making difficult decisions, carrying the weight of an entire kingdom. She'd woken thinking it was just her mind processing fear. But if he was right, what does this mean? She asked. This bond, what happens now? It means we have a choice, Alexander said. We can accept, complete the bond through a true mating mark. Or we can reject, break the connection through a specific ritual. But until we decide, the dreams will continue, and they will grow more intense. And if I want to reject? Something painful crossed his face, too quick to identify. Then I will perform the ritual. And you will be free to go wherever you want, with enough resources to start over, far from Victor and anyone who wants to hurt you. He sat back, but I would ask one thing first. What? Time. 2 weeks. Come with me to my castle. Get to know me. Let me get to know you, not through fragmented dreams, but really. And then at the end, make your conscious choice. Alara studied him, looking for signs of manipulation, of danger, but all she saw was weariness, loneliness, a powerful king who carried too much weight alone. And during these 2 weeks, she asked carefully, what do you expect from me? Honesty, conversation, nothing physical unless you choose. His eyes held hers. Alara, I'm not Victor. I don't force. I don't own. If this bond is real, I want it to be choice. From both sides. He sounded sincere. But Alara had learned the hard way that words were easy. All right, she said slowly. 2 weeks. But if at any moment I want to leave, you leave. My word as king. They remained silent for the rest of the journey. But Alara couldn't stop secretly watching him. This king who had appeared like a storm and changed everything. And ignoring the fact that, when their hands touched in the hall, she had felt something. As if she was finally complete. Chapter 3. The castle of the frozen northern lands was a fortress of black stone against gray sky. Alara stepped out of the carriage and stopped, mouth slightly open. It was enormous. Towers reaching clouds. Thick walls covered with ivy. Black and silver flags fluttering in the cold wind. Impressive, isn't it? Alexander said beside her. Frightening, Alara corrected. It looks like a prison. For some it is. For others, home. He offered his arm. Come. I'll introduce you to the main court members. The great hall was full. Warriors, counselors, servants, all stopped when Alexander entered with Alara beside him. My court, Alexander announced, voice carrying effortlessly. I present Alara. She will be with us as my guest for the next 2 weeks. Treat her with absolute respect. Murmurs ran through the room. Curious looks fixed on Alara. A woman approached, middle-aged, military posture, scar crossing her cheek. Your Majesty. Who exactly is she? Someone important, Alexander said firmly. That's all you need to know for now, Commander Sonia. Sonia looked Alara up and down, clearly not impressed, but she bowed. As you wish. Later, Alexander guided Alara through corridors. They stopped before ornate doors. Your quarters, he said, pushing them open. Alara entered and stopped. It was a complete suite. Bedroom with huge bed covered in furs, crackling fireplace, windows overlooking snow-covered mountains, bathroom with marble tub, sitting room with soft sofas, more luxurious than anything she'd ever known. It's too much, she said. It's appropriate for someone under my protection. Alexander pointed to an adjacent door. My quarters are there, connected but locked from my side. You control whether you want to open them or not. Alara looked at him suspiciously. Why connected? Because dreams are more intense when we're physically separated. If it gets too bad, proximity helps calm it. He shrugged. But the choice is always yours. He was being careful, too careful, as if expecting her to flee at any moment. Perhaps she should. Rest, Alexander said. We'll dine in 2 hours, and then we talk. Really. After he left, Alara sank onto the absurdly soft bed and let herself process everything. She had refused Victor, invoked ancient law, been claimed by a king, and now she was in an unknown castle, magically connected to an alpha she barely knew. Her life had turned into complete chaos. But looking out the window at the mountains, vast, wild, free, Alara realized something. For the first time in months, she wasn't being forced. She had choice. And that was everything. Chapter 4. Dinner was surprising. Alara expected a formal hall, dozens of people, tense atmosphere. Instead, Alexander led her to a smaller room. Table set for two. Simple but delicious food, roasted meat, vegetables, warm bread. "I thought you'd prefer intimacy for our first real conversation," he explained as they were served. "Thank you," Alara said, genuinely surprised. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Alexander asked, "Tell me about Michael, if you want to." Pain pierced her heart, but also relief. No one had asked. Everyone had just judged. He was a beta, low-ranking, worked in the stables. She smiled sadly. "We met by chance. I was running from Victor. He was courting me aggressively, and my family encouraged it. I tripped, twisted my ankle. Michael helped me. And you fell in love. Slowly, secretly. Tears burned. We knew it was impossible. I was already informally promised to Victor, but Michael made me feel seen, like a person, not property. How did he die? Victor discovered us, found letters we'd exchanged, called for public judgment, accused Michael of stealing his promised Omega." Alara wiped tears angrily. "Michael tried to explain that I had chosen him, but that only made it worse. Victor challenged him to combat. And Michael, he wasn't a warrior, never had a chance. And you had to watch," Victor insisted. "Said I needed to learn the consequences of defying my designated alpha." Her voice was hollow. "It took 20 minutes. Michael fought bravely, but in the end, she couldn't finish." Alexander was quiet, then extended his hand across the table, not demanding, but offering. When Alara hesitated, he said softly, "You don't have to. But if you want to share the weight, I'm here." Alara didn't understand why, but she took his hand, and immediately, something ran between them. Warmth, comfort, and through it, like a distant whisper, she felt Alexander's emotions. Anger, at Victor, at how he'd treated Alara. Pain, genuine empathy, and something deeper. Fierce determination to protect her. "You really can feel," she whispered. "And you can feel my emotions too, right?" Alara nodded, marveled and terrified. "This is intimacy I've never had. True intimacy isn't just physical. It's this." He squeezed her hand gently, sharing what's inside, without masks. They stayed like that for a moment. Then Alara pulled her hand back, sudden awareness of vulnerability hitting her. "Your turn," she said. "Tell me about you. Why does such a powerful king have no queen? No mate?" Something dark crossed his face. "Because I never found the true one, and I refused to settle." "Never? In how many years?" 32. He smiled without humor. "Old for an alpha without a mate. My council constantly pressures me. They say I need an heir, stability. And you? I say I'd rather be alone than be with the wrong person." He looked at her. "But loneliness weighs, especially when you carry a kingdom. Must be hard. Trusting someone when everyone wants something from you." "Exactly." Surprise shone in his eyes. "You understand. I understand being seen as an object, as a means to an end." Alara shrugged. "Maybe not the same weight, but yes, I understand." They talked for the next hour. About childhood, hers of struggle, his of pressure. About dreams, hers of freedom, his of true peace for his people. About fears. And slowly, Alara realized, this king wasn't a monster. He was just a man. Powerful? Yes. Dangerous, certainly. But also lonely. Carrying too much weight. Seeking true connection. Like her. "It's late," Alexander eventually said. "You should rest. Dreams can be intense tonight. First night in physical proximity. What should I expect? Memories. Mine and yours mixed. Maybe amplified emotions. Won't necessarily be bad, just intimate. Alara stood. Alexander, thank you. For today. For giving me choice. Always, he promised. That night, Alara slept and dreamed. Chapter 5. The dreams were devastating. Alara found herself in Alexander's body, tall, powerful, but so incredibly lonely. She saw his memories of training since childhood, being molded to be king. Saw his dying father making him promise to protect the kingdom above all. Saw him making impossible decisions, sending soldiers to war, judging criminals, refusing alliances that would have brought peace but cost autonomy. And she felt the weight, crushing, constant. Then the dream changed. And she was in her own body, but Alexander was there, experiencing her memories. Victor first courting her, gifts, pretty words. Then becoming possessive, cruel, the way her family pressured her, saying she should be grateful for such a strong alpha wanting her. Meeting Michael. First time someone asked what she wanted, not what she should do. The execution. Pain that tore her soul. Emptiness afterward. And through it all, she felt Alexander's emotions responding. Fury at Victor. Tenderness when he saw memories of Michael. Admiration when he saw her courage. Alara woke gasping, sweat soaking the sheets. The adjacent door opened. Alexander entered, only wearing pants, hair disheveled, eyes wild. You too, he said. It wasn't a question. I saw everything. Your childhood. The decisions. The weight. And I saw Victor. Michael. Your pain. He crossed the room, stopping beside the bed. Alara, I'm sorry. For everything you went through. It wasn't your fault. But I understand now. Completely. He sat on the edge of the bed, respectful, keeping distance. This bond, it's deeper than I imagined. For me too. Alara sat up, pulling covers. How do we make it stop? We can't. Not until we choose to accept or reject. He rubbed his face. But proximity helps. If you allow it, I can stay here. Just sleep. Physical presence calms the magic. Alara should say no. But the idea of facing these dreams alone. All right. But over the covers. And on the other side of the bed. Relief crossed his face. Of course. He lay down, rigid, clearly uncomfortable, but respecting boundaries. And Alara, despite the absurdity of the situation, fell asleep again. This time, the dreams were gentler, still mixed, but less chaotic, as if their souls were learning to dance together. Chapter 6. The following days established a routine. Alara explored the castle during the day, snow-covered gardens, vast library, training halls where warriors practiced. Alexander had duties as king, but they dined together every night, talked, shared stories, and every night they slept in the same bed, separated by invisible but carefully maintained boundary. The dreams continued, but they became less invasive, more natural, as if they were getting used to each other's presence. On the 5th day, Sonia found her in the gardens. You need to train, the commander said without preamble. Alara blinked. Train? Defense. You're an Omega, yes. But if you're going to stay here, even temporarily, you need to know how to protect yourself. Sonia crossed her arms. The king ordered it. I teach. In the following days, Sonia put her through brutal exercises. How to escape holds, where to hit to incapacitate a larger alpha, how to use environment as a weapon. You're small, Sonia said, while Alara gasped after knocking down a training dummy for the 20th time. But that's an advantage. Quick, agile, use it. Why are you doing this? Alara asked. You clearly don't like me. True, I don't trust you. Sonia was brutally honest. You appeared out of nowhere. The king claimed you without explanation. Seems convenient. Believe me, I didn't plan any of this. Maybe. Sonia tilted her head. But he's different. Less heavy. Like he finally has someone to share the burden with. And if you're responsible for that, then you're worth protecting. Protecting from what? From whoever wants to hurt him. Politics is war, Alara, and a king without a queen is a target. Sonia tapped her shoulder, harder than necessary. So you learn to fight. Because if you stay, you'll be a target too. That night, Alara mentioned the conversation to Alexander. Sonia's right, he admitted. There are factions that would oppose any choice I make, especially an Omega from a lesser pack. They'd say you don't have appropriate lineage. I have no lineage at all, Alara said bitterly. My family sold me like cattle. Then we build a new lineage, together. If you choose to stay. The word if hung between them. 1 week had passed. Another remained. And Alara still didn't know her answer. But she was starting to have an idea. Chapter 7. On the 10th day, everything changed. Alara was in the library when she heard commotion. Shouts. Sound of metal. She ran to the corridor and found guards mobilizing. What's happening? She asked one. Attack. On the southern borders. The king is leaving with the army. He hesitated. And they're saying it's the Red Shadow Pack. Victor. Terror froze her veins. Alara ran to the courtyard. Alexander was there, armor being put on, giving quick orders. Alexander! She shouted. He turned, and for the first time, she saw the warrior. Hard eyes, predator's stance. Alara, go back inside. You'll be safe here. Victor is attacking because of me. No. He's attacking because he's greedy and stupid. Alexander crossed to her. But I'll end this. Permanently. He'll kill you. Something gleamed in his eyes. Amusement? Unlikely. Alexander, don't joke. He's dangerous, cruel. And if something happens to you, you care, he interrupted softly. Wonder in his voice. You really care. Of course I care. You're... She couldn't finish. But she didn't need to, because Alexander leaned in and kissed her forehead. Gentle, silent promise. I'll return, he murmured, and then we'll have this conversation properly. He left with 100 warriors, and Alara stayed, heart pounding, praying to gods who had never heard her before. Please, bring him back. The hours dragged. Alara couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just walked the corridors, waiting. And then, through the bond, still present even at distance, she felt it. Pain. Sharp, burning through her shoulder. Alara staggered, sharp pain piercing their connection. Sonia was at her side instantly. What is it? Alexander. He's hurt. I feel it through the bond. Damn! Sonia helped her to a chair. Breathe. If you can feel it, it means he's alive. Focus on that. Alara tried. But the pain pulsed, and through it, she felt other things. Alexander's fury, determination, and underneath it all, fear. Not for himself, for her. He's afraid for me, Alara realized. Even in battle, he's thinking of me. Hours later, riders returned. Alexander was among them, alive, but bleeding. Deep wound on his shoulder. Alara ran without thinking. Reached him just as he dismounted. Are you all right? She gasped, hands flying over him, searching for injuries. I'll live. He smiled, tired but real. Victor didn't. You killed him? Didn't have to. Challenged him. He backed down. Alexander touched her face. I declared that any attack on you is war against me. He's not stupid enough to face my full army. But you're hurt. Scratched. Nothing more. He swayed slightly. Infirmary. Now, Alara ordered. And for the first time, the king obeyed. Chapter 8. Alexander was treated. Wound cleaned, sutured, bandaged. Alara stayed beside him through it all, holding his hand when pain cut through, pushing comfort through the bond. When they finished, she accompanied him back to his quarters, larger than hers, more Spartan. You should rest, she said. I should. But there's something I need to know first. He sat on the edge of the bed, looking at her. When I left, you were worried. Real feelings, not just forced bond. Yes. And now? 2 weeks are almost over. What's your choice, Alara? The question hung. Alara took a deep breath. When I came here, I was broken. Certain I'd never trust an alpha again. That I'd just survive. And now? Now I realize you showed me something I never had. Choice, respect, true partnership, not ownership. Tears burned her eyes. And I fell in love with you. Slowly, terrifyingly, but truly. Hope shone in his eyes. Alara, but I'm also afraid. Of ruining it. Of not being good enough. Of losing you like I lost Michael. Never, Alexander promised fiercely. Alara, I'm a warrior, king. I've survived hundreds of battles, and I promise I'll fight for us. Always. Even though I'm just an Omega from a lesser pack? No lineage? No political value? You have value that transcends politics. Courage, kindness, strength to face an abuser and say no. That's true power. He extended his hand. Stay, not because of the bond, but because you love me, because you want to build a life with me. Alara looked at the extended hand, at the king offering everything, and realized she had spent her life being forced, but now she was choosing. Yes, she whispered. I'll stay. The smile that lit his face was devastating. He pulled her into an embrace, gentle, mindful of the injury, but so firm. My mate, he murmured. My queen. My Alara. Yours, she agreed. Finally, willingly. Yours. And when he kissed her, first true kiss, not just a quick touch, it was like completing a puzzle. Perfect. Right. Inevitable. Alara felt the bond between them pulse. No longer just fragmented dreams or distant emotions. Now it was a living connection, breathing, growing with each beat of their hearts. This changes everything, Alexander said when they separated, forehead resting against hers. The bond felt our choice. It's solidifying. I feel it, like gentle fire under my skin. Alara touched his chest over his heart. Here, connected directly to you. And it will grow, until we complete the mating mark. He took her hand, kissing her knuckles. But not today. You deserve a proper ceremony, celebration. Not rushing in a wounded warrior's room. Alara laughed, a sound that surprised them both. When was the last time she'd laughed genuinely? You're wounded because of me. You fought for me. Nearly died defending my right to choose. She touched his face, tracing the strong line of his jaw. That's already more romantic than any formal ceremony could be. Something intense gleamed in his eyes. Alara, if you don't stop looking at me like that, my self-control will fail completely. And what if I don't want you to control yourself? The air between them changed, charged. Alexander's wolf shone in his eyes, pure silver, primal hunger. Are you sure? He asked, voice hoarse. Because once we start, once I truly mark you, there's no going back. You'll be mine, and I'll be yours. Forever. I'm sure, Alara whispered. And it was true. Absolute. Terrifying, but true. Alexander stood, ignoring the injury. He picked her up easily, as if she weighed nothing, and placed her on his bed. Then choose me, he said, climbing beside her. Say it out loud, so the bond hears, so the magic knows. Alara looked into the silver eyes, saw the man who had saved her, the king who had knelt to give her choice, the warrior who had bled for her, the mate who had truly seen her when everyone else just looked through. I choose you, Alexander, not because of magic or bond or forced destiny, but because you are kind when you could be cruel, strong but not a tyrant, powerful but lonely, because you made me feel safe for the first time in years, because when I look at you, I see a future I want to build. She touched the base of his neck, where the mark would be placed. I choose you, as mate, as partner, as mine. The growl that escaped him echoed off the walls. Primal, triumphant. And then he kissed her, not gentle like before, but with hunger awakened by feeling her choice. The kiss deepened, hands explored, respectful but urgent. Clothes were removed, layer by layer, each revelation accompanied by reverent touch. When Alexander finally pulled back to look at her, completely exposed before him, there was adoration in his eyes. Perfect, he murmured. Absolutely perfect. Alara touched the scars covering his torso, maps of battles won, wars survived. You too. He leaned in, kissing the old tear stains on her face, Evidence of all the times she'd cried for Michael, for herself, for the life she'd never had. "I promise," Alexander whispered against her skin, "you'll never cry from pain again. Only from joy, from pleasure, from love." And then he showed her, slowly, patiently, as if they had all the time in the world. He touched every part of her as if precious, kissed places that had never been touched with tenderness, murmured promises against her skin, of protection, partnership, devotion. And when they finally became one, body to body, soul to soul, Alara felt the bond explode. No longer a whisper, but a song. Triumphant shout of two halves becoming whole. Through it, she felt everything Alexander felt. Awe, gratitude, pleasure so intense it was almost pain. Love, deep, consuming, absolute. And he felt hers. Every wave of sensation, every moment of connection, every spark of joy. It was intimacy beyond the physical. It was fusion of souls. When they reached the peak together, Alexander bit, not hard enough to bleed much, but enough to mark the base of her neck, where everyone could see, mating mark, permanent, eternal bond. And Alara, following instinct she didn't know she possessed, bit back, marking him as he had marked her. Equals, partners, true mates. Afterward they lay entwined, sweat cooling, breaths calming. The bond was now a constant current between them, not invasive, but comforting, like knowing she'd never truly be alone again. That was, Alara began, without words. Transcendent, Alexander completed. He traced the fresh mark on her neck, already healing but would leave a silver scar, visible symbol of belonging. "You're my queen now, officially, in the eyes of magic and the gods. And you're my king," Alara said, testing the words, liking how they sounded. "My mate, my Alexander." They slept like that, bodies entwined, bond singing softly between them, and for the first time in months, Alara didn't dream of pain or loss, but of future, bright, full of possibilities, beside the man she'd chosen, and who had chosen her back. Chapter 9. Morning brought reality with the force of a hammer. Alara woke in Alexander's arms, body aching in ways that made her blush even in privacy. The mark on her neck pulsed, not painfully, but constantly, living reminder of what they'd done, of the bond that was now permanent, irreversible, eternal. Through the connection, she felt Alexander waking too. His emotions washed over her, deep satisfaction, tenderness, but also growing concern. "Good morning, my queen," he murmured, voice rough from sleep. He kissed her hair, then the fresh mark. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than in years," Alara admitted. She turned to face him, tracing the strong line of his jaw. "But I feel your worry, through the bond." "What troubles you?" Alexander sighed. "I can't hide anything from you now, can I? Nor you from me. So tell me." He sat up, and Alara did the same, pulling the sheet around her. The wound on his shoulder was almost healed. Alpha metabolism accelerated. But there was still stiffness in how he moved. "My court knows nothing," he began. "And when they discover I've mated with an Omega who arrived just 2 weeks ago, without consulting the council, without political alliance, without even a proper courtship period," he paused. "There will be chaos." "Regrets?" Alara asked, even fearing the answer. "Never." He took her hand, intertwining fingers. "But I can't ignore political reality. I'm king, yes, but I rule through delicate balance. Council of elders, military commanders, territorial nobles, they all have power. And they all expected me to choose a mate who would strengthen alliances. And you chose an Omega with no lineage, no political value, possibly starting conflict with the Red Shadow Pack." Alara felt the familiar weight of inadequacy pressing. "I understand. I'm a problem." "You are my mate," Alexander cut fiercely. His eyes gleamed silver. "My choice, and I don't regret it. But I need to manage the consequences carefully, or I risk internal division that could weaken the entire kingdom." Before Alara could respond, urgent knocks exploded on the door. "Your Majesty!" Sonia's voice. "Urgent situation," Alexander growled low, pure frustration. "Come in." Sonia entered, stopped upon seeing Alara in bed, fresh mark impossible to ignore. For a long moment, the commander just looked. Then surprisingly she smiled, a fierce but genuine expression. "Finally," she said. "I thought you two would dance around this for months." "Sonia," Alexander warned. "Right. Situation." The commander became serious. Delegation from the Red Shadows arrived at dawn. 20 warriors led by Beta Gregory. Victor didn't come personally, clearly too cowardly. But they're camped at the gates demanding immediate audience. "Let them wait," Alexander said coldly. "There's more. They're claiming Alara fled a legally binding ceremony. That the family contract between her family and Victor is still valid. And that, therefore, she technically belongs to the Red Shadows." Sonia looked at Alara. "They're demanding her return, or substantial compensation." Rage exploded through the bond, not Alara's, but Alexander's. So intense she gasped, feeling as if the air itself burned. "She is mine," he snarled, partial transformation happening. Eyes gleaming pure silver, claws extending. "Marked, mated, queen of these lands. And anyone who dares suggest otherwise." "Alexander!" Alara touched his arm. Through the bond, she pushed calm. "Breathe. Don't let Victor provoke you into a mistake." He visibly fought for control. Finally, transformation receded, but fury still burned in his eyes. "Sonia, call an emergency council meeting, 1 hour, and bring the Red Shadow delegation but under heavy guard. And as for..." Sonia looked at Alara. "My queen will be at my side, as an equal, as it should be." After Sonia left, Alara dressed quickly. Her hands trembled as she fastened her hair. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Victor won't give up easily. And if your council agrees with him? If they decide I'm not appropriate?" Alexander crossed to her, turning her to face him. "Then I'll challenge each one. Because you are appropriate. Not because of lineage or politics, but because you're my true mate. And that supersedes any human law. But it will cause division. Exactly what you feared. Then let division come," he said fiercely. "I'll face it. For you. For us. Always." 1 hour later, the great hall was full. Alara entered beside Alexander, dressed in formal clothes Sonia had hastily provided. Silver and black silk dress, the royal house colors. Her hair was pulled into an elaborate braid, and the mark on her neck was completely exposed. Statement impossible to ignore. The council sat in a semicircle, 12 elders, 5 military commanders, 8 territorial nobles. All stopped upon seeing her. Shock, anger, confusion crossing diverse faces. And on the other side of the hall, the Red Shadow delegation. Gregory in front, a burly man with a scar crossing his face. And behind him, 19 warriors, all looking at Alara with expressions ranging from surprise to contempt. Alexander guided her to the thrones, his massive, carved from black stone, and beside it, a smaller throne that had never been occupied. Queen's throne. When Alara sat, murmurs exploded. "Order," Alexander thundered. Silence fell instantly. "We're here to resolve 2 issues. First, the Red Shadow delegation and their claims. Second, officially presenting my mate and queen." One of the elders, an old man named Dmitri, stood. "Your Majesty, with all respect, the council wasn't consulted about the mating. This violates established protocol. Protocol that suggests consultation, doesn't require it." Alexander leaned forward. "I'm king, and I chose my mate, as is my right. But she has no lineage," another noble protested. "She comes from a lesser pack, unknown family. What alliances does this bring?" "Alliance is stronger than politics," Alexander said. "True bond, destined mates, something that cannot be negotiated or arranged." Gregory stepped forward. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. But there's a legal matter. Ilara was contractually promised to Alpha Victor. The mating ceremony had already begun when she fled. I invoked the law of sacred repudiation, Ilara said, voice firm despite her nerves. I publicly rejected Alpha Victor before witnesses. That nullifies the family contract. And then she was claimed by me, Alexander added, before any challenge was formalized, also within the law. Ancient law, yes, Dmitri agreed reluctantly, but that doesn't deny there were irregularities. And Alpha Victor is demanding compensation for loss of his promised bride. Compensation, Alexander repeated, voice dangerous. For losing a woman who rejected him? Who invoked sacred right to refuse? For resources invested? For the family agreement? For public humiliation? Gregory pulled out a scroll. Alpha Victor is willing to settle peacefully. For an appropriate price. What price? Sonia asked from the side of the hall. 50,000 gold coins, or equivalent territory on the borderlands. Gasps of shock echoed. It was a fortune. King's ransom. This is extortion, one of the commanders growled. It's fair compensation, Gregory retorted. Or we can settle through war. Alpha Victor is prepared to invade if his demands aren't met. Alexander was about to explode. Ilara felt through the bond. But she touched his hand. And through the connection, she pushed a thought. Wait, there's another way. He looked at her, questioning. Ilara stood, and all attention turned to her. May I speak? She asked. This is your queen, Alexander said, looking at the council. She has every right to speak in this hall. Ilara took a deep breath. Alpha Gregory, convey a message to Victor. He doesn't want war. He wants to save face. His entire pack knows I was the one who rejected him, that I chose to flee. That's humiliation no amount of gold truly erases. Gregory frowned. What's your point? My point is that Victor is trying to turn defeat into victory, making it seem like he chose to trade me for something more valuable. But everyone knows the truth. And the more he demands, the more desperate he seems. She walked to the center of the hall, forcing herself to maintain upright, confident posture. So I offer an alternative. King Alexander and I sign a public declaration. We acknowledge there was a family contract. We apologize for the abrupt break. And we offer reasonable compensation, not 50,000 coins. But trade rights over the mountain routes, 20% of profits for 10 years. Potentially greater value than immediate gold. And we also grant full pardon for the recent border invasion. Murmurs ran through both sides. In exchange, Ilara continued, Victor signs a document permanently renouncing all rights over me, publicly acknowledges my mating mark with King Alexander, and swears never to speak my name again or claim any connection. That's, Gregory began. Generous, Ilara completed. Excessively so. But also smart. It allows Victor to save face. Say he negotiated a valuable trade deal. That he traded a problematic Omega for real economic gain. His warriors see strength, not weakness. And both kingdoms avoid war that would cost lives on both sides. Absolute silence fell. Then Dmitri laughed, a surprising sound coming from the stern elder. Machiavellian, politically astute. Perhaps she is appropriate for queen. Others agreed, reluctantly, but agreed. Gregory looked at Ilara with new assessment. I'll need to consult Alpha Victor, but I believe he'll see the wisdom in this proposal. You have 3 days, Alexander said. After that, the offer expires, and my troops mobilize. After the delegation left, the council remained, and Dmitri stood again. Your Majesty, the Queen Ilara, showed impressive political intelligence, but there's still the matter of lineage, of alliance, of respect, Alexander cut. He stood, and power radiated from him in waves. I marked Ilara as my true mate. In the eyes of the gods, of magic, of the most ancient law governing our people, this is not up for discussion, not open to debate, will not be questioned. He looked at each council member. What is open to discussion is how we proceed. Ilara will be formally crowned as queen within a month. Full ceremony, all traditions observed. And you will all participate, or resign your positions. Choose. Thick tension filled the air. Finally, Dmitri bowed. As you wish, Your Majesty. We will participate. And he looked at Alara. Perhaps we should give the new queen a chance. Actions speak louder than lineage. And today, she demonstrated wisdom. Slowly, others agreed. Not all. Some faces remained hard. But enough. That night, Alara and Alexander finally found themselves alone. She collapsed in a chair, exhaustion taking over. That was incredible, Alexander completed. He knelt before her, taking her hands. Alara, you were magnificent. The way you handled Gregory, the council, you were born for this. I was terrified. And yet you faced it. That's true courage. He kissed her hands. But I'm sorry for putting you in that position. Don't, Alara interrupted. Don't apologize for choosing me, or for trusting me to be at your side. Yes, it was scary, but also empowering. For the first time, I had a voice, real power, and I used it to protect both of us. Together, Alexander said. That's how we'll face everything. Not me deciding and you following, but true partners. Alara smiled, first genuine of the day. Partners. 3 days dragged like eternity. Alara used the time to get to know the castle, the servants, begin understanding the complexities of ruling. Sonia became an unexpected ally, introducing her to key commanders, explaining military politics. I still don't fully trust you, Sonia admitted as they walked the walls. But I respect how you handled Victor. And the king, he smiles now. Really, I haven't seen that in years. On the third day, the answer arrived. Gregory returned. Alone this time, without armed delegation. Alpha Victor accepts the terms, he announced formally. The documents were signed, witnessed by elders of our pack. He renounces all rights over Alara, acknowledges the mating, and will never speak her name again. Relief so intense flooded Alara that her legs weakened. Alexander held her, silent support. And, in exchange, he asked, the trade rights, as proposed. And he asks forgiveness. Gregory seemed uncomfortable. Not officially. But he conveyed that your queen demonstrated more grace than he ever deserved. Convey back, Alara said, finding her voice, that I'm free. Truly free. And that's all that matters. After Gregory left for the last time, Alexander pulled Alara into an embrace. It's over, he murmured. Victor can't touch you anymore. Legally, officially, permanently. I'm free, Alara repeated, wonder in her voice. For the first time in my entire life, I'm truly free. And mine, Alexander added. By choice, by love, forever. They stood like that for a long moment. Then Alara pulled back, expression becoming serious. There's something I want to do, with my new position, my new power. Tell me. Sonia mentioned there are Omegas from other packs asking for refuge, fleeing situations similar to mine, and I thought, she took a deep breath, I want to establish a sanctuary, official program. Give them what you gave me, safety, choice, possibility to rebuild lives. Alexander studied her. It will be controversial. Many alphas will see it as a threat to traditional structure, as encouragement to rebellion. I know, but, and that's why, he continued, smile growing, it's absolutely perfect. Do it, Alara. Use whatever resources you need. This kingdom will protect those who need it, and any alpha who doesn't like it can come challenge me personally. Alara kissed him, grateful, fierce, promising everything she felt but still hadn't found words to say. And through the bond, Alexander felt everything. Love, determination, hope for the future they would build together. A future where Omegas weren't property, where choice mattered more than tradition, where two souls who met in the darkest moment chose, every day, to keep choosing each other. Chapter 10. Epilogue, 5 years later. The first day of spring arrived with bright sun and melting snow. Alara walked through the garden she'd planted 3 years ago, a project that started small but grew to fill an entire acre of the castle grounds. Wildflowers grew alongside medicinal herbs. Fruit trees lined the edges, and in the center, a stone fountain carved with dancing wolves. The Queen's Garden, the servants called it. But Alara thought of it as the Garden of Hope. "Mama! Mama, look what I found!" She turned, automatic smile lighting her face. Dmitri, 4 years old, all unstoppable energy and infinite curiosity, was running toward her. Dark hair like hers falling into silver eyes he'd inherited from his father. Small hands holding something precious. "What did you find, my love?" Alara asked, kneeling to his level. "A butterfly. Look, look." He carefully opened his hands, revealing a delicate creature with iridescent blue wings. She was sleeping in a bud, but when the sun came out, she woke up. "Is it magic, Mama?" "Kind of magic," Alara agreed, gently touching the butterfly's wing. "It's called transformation. She was a caterpillar, then she slept in a cocoon, and now she woke up completely changed, more beautiful, free to fly." "Like you," Dmitri said with a child's simple logic. "Grandma Sonia said you were a prisoner but became a queen." Alara laughed, heart warming. Sonia had become more than an ally in recent years, true friend, confidant, an honorary grandmother to her children. "Something like that? Yes. But look, your butterfly wants to fly now. Should we let her?" Dmitri hesitated, clearly wanting to keep his discovery. But then, with care that made him his father's son, he raised his hands high. The butterfly opened its wings, perched for a moment on his nose, making him giggle, then flew in a lazy spiral to the sky. "Goodbye, butterfly!" Dmitri shouted, waving frantically. "Come visit me again!" "Good boy," a deep, familiar voice said behind them. Alara turned. Alexander was there, holding a bundle wrapped in pink blankets. Their daughter, Natasha, 6 months old, eyes already showing signs of becoming silver like her father's, looked around with intense curiosity. "Did she finally sleep?" Alara asked, standing. "After an hour of singing, 2 stories, and 3 attempts to chew my finger," Alexander smiled, an expression that came so easily now, so different from the stern king she'd met 5 years ago. "This little one is as determined as her mother, and as stubborn as her father," Alara teased, approaching to kiss Natasha on the forehead. The baby gurgled, grabbing Alara's hair with surprising strength. "Dad! Dad, come see!" Dmitri shouted, already having run to another corner of the garden. "There are millions of flowers here. Millions!" "Millions? That's a lot of flowers." Alexander carefully passed Natasha to Alara, then chased Dmitri. "You better show me every one." Alara watched them, her mate chasing their son, both laughing as Dmitri chattered about every plant, every insect, every small wonder he discovered. Alexander answered each question with infinite patience, encouraging curiosity that some alphas would have suppressed. 5 years. 5 years since that terrifying ceremony. Since she'd said no to Victor and changed the course of her entire life. 5 years since Alexander had appeared like a storm and offered choice when no one else would. Natasha began to whimper, small face scrunching. Alara adjusted her, preparing to feed her while walking to a stone bench under a flowering tree. "You're thoughtful today." Alara looked up. Sonia had approached silently, warrior's habit. Even at 53, the commander moved like a predator. "Just remembering," Alara said, "how everything changed. Changed for the better." Sonia sat beside her, watching Alexander and Dmitri. "He's different now, lighter. Like he finally allows himself to just be a man sometimes, not always a king. He still carries so much," Alara said softly. "The decisions, the responsibilities. But now we have a ritual. Every night, no matter how busy the day was, we dine together. We talk. He shares the weight, and I help carry it. True partners." Sonia smiled. "I admit I had doubts when you appeared. I thought, another Omega wanting a crown. But you proved worth every bit of that mark." Alara touched the silver scar on her neck, 5 years healed but still visible. Still perfect. "Sonia, can I ask something?" "Always." "The sanctuary. How are the numbers this month?" Sonia's face became serious. 18 new refugees. 3 from Victor's pack, believe it or not. 5 from the eastern lands. The rest from smaller packs scattered around. 18, Alara repeated, heart tightening. All fleeing? Situations like yours? Yes. Sonia touched her shoulder. But finding refuge thanks to you. 3 of last year's refugees have remarried, by their own choice this time. 5 started businesses. 2 are training as warriors. And the children? 7 births. All healthy. All mothers choosing names, choosing how to raise their children, choosing their own lives. Sonia squeezed her shoulder. You did that, Alara. Transformed your pain into hope for hundreds. Tears burned Alara's eyes. I just gave them what Alexander gave me, choice. And that's all that matters. Later, after the children were put to sleep, a long process involving 2 stories, one from Alara, one from Alexander, 3 glasses of water, Dmitri needing to check that the butterfly was okay, and Natasha refusing to let go of Alexander's finger. The mates finally found themselves alone. They sat on the balcony of their shared quarters, looking at the stars. The same view they'd observed 5 years ago, but everything was different now. Remember the first night here? Alara asked, leaning back against Alexander. He automatically wrapped around her, familiar warmth and strength. When you offered me 2 weeks to decide? And you were terrified, certain it was a trap. He kissed her hair. Look at us now, 2 children, kingdom transformed. You changed everything, Alara. We changed everything, she corrected. You could have used and discarded me. Could have forced. But you gave me respect, partnership, true voice. Because you deserved it. Always deserved it. They stayed in comfortable silence. Then Alara said, I received a letter today. From my mother. Alexander tensed. First time in 5 years. What did she want? To ask forgiveness. To say she regretted selling me to Victor. That she was proud to see who I'd become. Alara laughed without humor. And to ask for money, of course. My father is sick. They need funds for treatment. And you? I sent the funds. Through an intermediary, with the condition they never contact me again. Alara touched the mark on her neck. Not out of cruelty, but because that part of my life is over. They made choices. I made mine, and I won't let them contaminate what we've built. Wise choice. Alexander turned her to face him. But what about Victor? I heard he's married again. Yes. 3rd mate in 5 years. I heard it's difficult with them. Alara felt a weight of guilt. Sometimes I think I could have stayed, spared other Omegas from suffering with him. No. Alexander cupped her face in his hands. You're not responsible for his choices, for his cruelty. You saved yourself, and then used your position to save hundreds of others. That's all you could do. All anyone could ask. But, no buts. Alara, listen to me. His silver eyes held hers. Victor was always a monster, with or without you. But you refused to be broken. Refused to accept a fate everyone said was inevitable, and you transformed pain into power that changed an entire kingdom. He kissed her, gentle but firm. Never blame yourself for surviving. Alara nestled against him, letting his words calm the persistent guilt. The refugees want to hold a ceremony, she said after a moment. On the sanctuary's anniversary, celebration of freedom, and they want me to speak. What will you say? The truth. That freedom isn't given, it's won. That each one of them who had the courage to leave, to seek refuge, to rebuild, they're true warriors, as strong as any soldier. Perfect. And I'll be there, at your side, as always. The following week, the ceremony took place. The garden was transformed. Lanterns hung in trees, tables loaded with food, and in the center, a circle where 43 women stood, all refugees from the sanctuary, ranging from teenagers to grandmothers. Alara looked at each face, saw her own scars reflected, but also saw something more. Hope, strength, future. Sisters, she began, voice carrying. 5 years ago, I was where many of you were, being forced to marry a man I feared, certain that life would be endless prison. But I was lucky. Someone gave me choice when no one else would. She looked at Alexander, standing beside the circle. He nodded encouragingly. But I recognize not everyone has a king appearing to save them, and they shouldn't need one. Because the truth is, you saved yourselves. Each one who had the courage to leave, to seek refuge, to say no more. You are the heroines of your own stories. Applause echoed. Some women cried openly. This sanctuary will continue, will expand, and one day, I hope, it won't be necessary anymore. Because we'll have changed our world so completely that Omegas won't need to flee, won't need to hide, won't need to choose between prison and loneliness. She raised her glass of wine. To freedom, to choice, to all of us who refuse to break. To freedom, the chorus of voices echoed. Later, when the celebration diminished, a young Omega approached Alara. No more than 16, eyes still showing fear that hadn't completely disappeared. Queen Alara, she said timidly, Can I ask a question? Always, and just Alara is fine. How did you stop being afraid? Of men, of trusting again? Alara thought carefully. I never stopped completely. I'm still afraid sometimes. Still have occasional nightmares about Victor, about that altar. But I learned the difference between healthy fear, which keeps us cautious, and fear that paralyzes us. She took the girl's hand. And I learned that not all alphas are monsters, that there are good men who respect, who protect without controlling, who love without possessing. Finding one takes time. Healing takes time. But it's possible. Do you think I'll find someone? Someday? I think you'll find yourself first. Who you are beyond the trauma, beyond the fear. And then, if you choose, maybe you'll find a partner who deserves you. Alara smiled. But even if you don't, even if you choose to stay alone, that's also valid. Because the point is choice. Always choice. The girl hugged her, sudden, fierce. Thank you. For everything. That night, after everyone left, Ilara and Alexander walked through the gardens. Dmitri ran ahead chasing fireflies. Natasha slept in a sling against Alexander's chest. Beautiful speech today, he said. You inspired every person present. I just shared my truth. And your truth is powerful. He stopped, turning her to face him. Alara, there's something I want to give you. I was waiting for the right moment. Alexander, I don't need anything. You need this. He pulled out a small scroll from his pocket. It's a royal decree, making the Omega Sanctuary an official and permanent institution of the kingdom, with guaranteed budget, legal protection, and you as lifetime director. Tears filled Alara's eyes. It means that even after I'm gone, even generations from now, Omegas will have refuge, will have choice. Because of you, your legacy will remain. She kissed him, grateful, fierce, pouring all the love she felt. Dmitri ran back. What are you doing? Celebrating, Alexander said, picking up his son with his free arm. Celebrating everything we have. That night, after both children finally slept, Dmitri nestled in his bed with a book about butterflies he'd insisted on taking. Natasha in her crib beside the parents' bed. Alara and Alexander lay together. Any regrets? She asked, their ritual, a question they occasionally asked. Never. You? Just one, Alara admitted. That I didn't find you sooner. That I wasted years in fear. But then you wouldn't have appreciated this, us, the same way. And you wouldn't have the strength you have now. He pulled her closer. Everything you suffered, as terrible as it was, shaped who you are. And I love every piece of who you are. Through the bond, Alara felt the absolute truth of his words. 5 years, and the connection had only deepened. Now they shared not just emotions, but thoughts, dreams, even comfortable silences. I love you, she whispered. Today, tomorrow, all the days that remain. I love you, Alexander echoed. My mate, my queen, my Alara. And as they slept, bodies entwined, Bond singing softly, children safe in nearby rooms, Alara dreamed, not of the past, not of pain or fear, but of future. She saw Dmitri growing, strong, kind, becoming a king who would respect everyone, not just the powerful. She saw Natasha, fierce, intelligent, perhaps becoming a warrior, or healer, or whatever she chose to be. She saw the sanctuary expanding, helping hundreds, then thousands. She saw gradual changes spreading across the continent, laws changing, attitudes evolving, Omegas gaining rights they'd never had. She saw growing old beside Alexander, graying hair, wrinkles marking faces, but love only deepening. And through it all, she saw choice, constant, renewed, celebrated. When she woke at dawn, Alexander was already awake, watching her. "Good dream?" he asked. "The best," Alara said. "I dreamed of us, of everything we'll build, of the legacy we'll leave. And was it good?" "It was perfect." She touched his face. "Because it was ours, chosen by us, built through love, not obligation." Shouts of, "Mama, Papa," echoed from Dimitri's room. Alexander sighed with amusement. And the day begins. But when they entered the room and found Dimitri, hair sticking up everywhere, shouting that the butterfly had visited his dream and told him secrets, they both just laughed. Because this was their life now. Chaos. Love. Purpose. A queen who had been a broken Omega. A king who had found his mate when he stopped looking. 2 children who would grow up knowing that true love existed. And hundreds of lives touched, changed, saved. All because one woman said no when everyone expected yes. All because a king offered choice when he could have forced. All because 2 broken hearts chose to heal together. And that choice, renewed each day, in every small gesture, in every kind word, in every brave decision, was stronger than any forced bond could ever be. The end. And if you're listening to this story, remember, no one, no alpha, no tradition, no ancient law has the right over you. Your life is yours. Your choices are yours. And when you find someone who respects that, who sees you as an equal, who offers partnership instead of ownership, that's when true love begins. But even if you never find that someone, even if you choose to walk alone, you're still complete. You're still valuable. You still deserve happiness. Because in the end, the most important freedom isn't what another gives us. It's what we claim for ourselves. Comment. Which part touched your heart most deeply? Was it Alara's courage in refusing Victor at the altar? The moment Alexander appeared and changed everything? The shared dreams of the magical bond? The intelligent political negotiation? The sanctuary she created? Or the epilogue showing family and legacy built through conscious choices? And would you like more stories exploring unique magical bonds like the law of blood and ashes? Leave in the comments.